Hey, what's going on, Who That Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, and welcome to another edition of the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. Thanks for checking out the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Well, Who That Nation, we're a couple days removed from the Saints' heartbreaking loss that they sustained against the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday in the wild card round of the playoffs. And I got to be honest with you, Who That Nation, I'm still not over it. I'm still not over this game. I'm still not over this game. And it's just so frustrating to watch sports, man. I am a huge sports fan, love watching sports, but just watching the divisional round and just watching the Minnesota Vikings go across my television screen taking on the San Francisco 49ers, when I know that my squad was a much better team than the Minnesota Vikings, it just makes me sick, man. And then I'm looking at ESPN, and they report that Adam Thielen injured his ankle in practice, and Stephon Diggs has missed his second day of practice with the flu. Now, I'm not the type of person that wish injury on anybody. But I think that is just, a true testament of how snake bitten this franchise, I'm talking the New Orleans Saints, have been over the past 3 years. This has tested the will of even the most loyal Saints fan, the most dedicated Saints fan. And not that I'm saying that people are trying to jump ship, because that's definitely not what I'm trying to do. But it's just the frustration, and you wondering to yourself, like, what in the heck can this team possibly do to get over the hump? And me, this is all I've been thinking about, man. Of course, I think about other things as well. My son, my beautiful fiance, I think about that stuff too. But when I'm analyzing and I'm thinking about topics to put on video or to make a podcast out of, I start to look at the organization itself, and I look at it from top to bottom. And I'm just wondering to myself, what do they have to change in order to get over the hump? I mean, I thought it was Joe Vitton crew a couple years back. That same old defense all the time, man. Linebackers couldn't cover. Corners and safeties couldn't cover. Defensive line couldn't get no penetration. And I thought maybe when Mike Nolan and Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell and Curtis Johnson comes back from Tulane, I thought things would change, but they have changed, but in ways they stayed the same. And it's just frustrating, man, because you look at the draft that they had over the past 3 years, the collection of really good Saints players that contribute right away. Jeff Ireland and the Saints front office have done an outstanding job drafting these young players. I mean, on paper, they look like the best Saints team ever assembled. And I know some people will argue with me because the Saints won a Super Bowl in 2009, but I still think these teams were better than the 2009 teams. So the question is, Who That Nation, what the problem is? What the issue is? What's really going on? Why can't this team get over the hump? So I look at the coaches. I look at the defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen. Now, Dennis Allen does deserve credit. I understand that. I understand this man deserves credit. I mean, the defense, when Rob Ryan was here, was very undisciplined, man. It was always 12 men on the field. You had people like Brandon Browner, Stanley Jean-Baptiste, Sterling Moore, Keenan Lewis, Jairus Byrd, Kenny Vaccaro. Look, I understand that. He changed the defense. He made it disciplined. And we appreciate that in the Who That Nation. But when it comes down to it, when he goes up against offensive-minded coaches, he always just get exposed, man. You look at the San Francisco 49ers game. I mean, Kyle Shanahan was making this dude look like he was a rookie defensive coordinator, not a guy that has been around the league, that has been a head coach, in his second stint with the Saints, he just looks like he just a deer in headlights. His defense constantly giving up big plays at crucial moments. And speaking of which, you got to look at Aaron Glenn too, the secondary coach. This guy been coaching the secondary since 2017. And once again, improvements were made. But when it matters most, when the game is on the line, folks, they choke. So somebody out there right now asking themselves, man, what's going on? CT, I mean, TJ, you talk about the defense. It's not what Rob Ryan had. Is very disciplined. It's a good locker room, good core players. I'll tell you what I want. I want some defensive players that are some savages. Do you hear me? I want some savages. That's what I want on defense. It's frustrating when you see teams who have losing records, who go out here and they restructure their team. These organizations, they get these defensive coordinators to come in, and all of a sudden, right away, they got elite, light-out defensive players. They got elite, lights-out coaches. And I'm like, why can't we have that down here in New Orleans? Why can't we have this with the Saints? How come we always got to have a bend but don't break defense? How come we always got to be having our fingers crossed late in the fourth quarter because we have to hope and pray and wish that God answers our prayers because the defense is not elite. And we don't know if they're going to make a stop or not. I want a real, legit defense. I'm tired of getting by. And see, that's what's wrong with the Who Dat Nation. I'm just going to call some of y'all out. See, y'all okay with getting by. Y'all cool with that because y'all start thinking about the dark ages of the New Orleans Saints. Yeah, that's right. The dark ages when we was wearing bags on our heads and we were ashamed to wear those starter jackets that had the Florida Lee on the front, or our Saints hats or shirts. And that's what y'all think about. So y'all think about, well, I mean, this better than what we had in the past. Well, look and open your eyes. It has been a decade. 10 years, 10 plus years if you want to be honest, the Saints have been one of the most legit elite teams this past decade. So that tells you right there, they're on the right track. The Saints in the past decade had the 5th best record in the National Football League among teams. 5th. And the only reason why they weren't tied for 4th is because the Seattle Seahawks had a tie. That's it. They had the same record as the Seattle Seahawks. They both had 100 wins. I'm just tired of getting by, man. And it's frustrating because I said before at the beginning of this podcast, the team is just too good. I demand excellence out of the Saints because everything that they have done has proven that this team should be excellent. Well, what else you want, TJ? How about an offensive-minded coach that's not afraid to run the football? I got a plan, Who Dat Nation. This is what we need to do. Matter of fact, I'm going to do it. I am going to make T-shirts. And on the front of the T-shirt, it's going to say, run the football. Because maybe Sean Payton has to be reminded that the guy that actually lines up behind Drew Brees from time to time is actually a running back, and his job is, to catch the ball out of the backfield. That's one. But his main objective is to run the football. You look at people like Latavius Murray, who is basically being squandered and wasted in the Saints offense. Do you realize, Who Dat Nation, that Latavius Murray, when Alvin Kamara went out and when he was hurt, he averaged 159 yards from scrimmage, running and catching the football. 159 yards. And that probably wouldn't have happened if Drew Brees would have still been in the lineup. It was because of Teddy Bridgewater. So that's when Sean Payton decided to run the football. So that tells me right there that if this man really wants to run the football, he can. If he really wants to commit to the run, he can. So, what do I want? I want Sean Payton to relinquish the play sheet. I want him to get somebody that, I'm not talking Pete Carmichael, because I think he needs to be gone. Bring somebody else in that doesn't have the same mind frame. I feel like when you're talking to Pete Carmichael, you're talking to Sean Payton. Pete Carmichael has been on juicy fruit duty for years because he definitely ain't been calling no plays. The only time I ever seen Pete Carmichael with a play sheet in his hand was in 2012 when Sean Payton was suspended. That's it. I mean, besides that, he was fetching juicy fruit on the sidelines. That is not what we need. In the words of Mike Singletary, I want winners, man. I want aggression on the defensive side of football. I want smash mouth offense. Hit you in the mouth. That game plan that the New Orleans Saints went into the Superdome with was an embarrassment. I mean, honestly, man, do you not understand the pass rushes that the Minnesota Vikings have? Do you think that you could have just easily just stood there in a pocket with Drew Brees and let him pick the Minnesota Vikings team apart? If you thought that, then you are insane. And what makes matters worse, the guy who is the head coach on the other side with the Vikings is your best friend. You should understand his tendencies. You should understand where he's coming from. Y'all was on the same coaching staff with Parcells. But, we got to get the ball downfield. Tempo. There was no reason why, after Taysom Hill broke off that run, on a 1st and 10, should Sean Payton be calling a passing play with Drew Brees? It was obvious that they had the Minnesota Vikings defense on their heels. It was obvious that they were starting to get worn down on the defensive front because they don't really have that much rotation. They honestly just have those hybrid defensive linemen. They don't have a top rotation on the defensive line. So they were getting worn down. But what does Sean Payton want to do? Sean Payton want to push the ball. 1st and 10. It's 20-17. Run the football. Now the game is in your hands. Run the football. It's frustrating. It's frustrating, Who Dat Nation. I'm sorry. It is frustrating. Just day after day since this game, realizing that the Saints season is over. It's frustrating. And people like, TJ, let it go. How can you possibly let something like this go? How can you let it go? How can you just have this much optimism? Well, next year, I'm a Who Dat fan, Who Dat till I die. I'm never going to give up on the Saints. I'm going to keep on believing they're going to bounce back. Look, I'm tired of bouncing back, man. Juvenile didn't even bounce back this much. People ask me what I want. That's exactly what I want. I want an elite defense. I want a coach that can run the football. I want him to be committed to the run. And I want some wide receivers, besides the name of Michael Thomas, that can get separation, that can actually get off press coverage. That's exactly what I want.